Professor Chris Mustapha Nwaokobia. You're welcome to Jnr Media TV.
The pleasure is mine.
The election has come and gone. The democracy is what we still practice. People believe in the rule of law. The judiciary delivered a judgment within the week. Therein, they dismissed the case brought before it by APM, PDP, and Labour Party. Many Nigerians are not happy. They think that there is a miscarriage of justice. As someone who is politically conscious, having listened to that judgment delivered by the Presidential Election Commission or Tribunal or Court, what's your view vis-a-vis the Nigerian democracy of today?
The first thing we must note is that Mother Justice would have tears in her eyes. The second thing to note is that it wasn't just about miscarriage of justice, it was pedestrian. On every count, on every score, on every prayers made by the petitioners, the judges read something utterly different from the intendments of the draftsman of the law. We have constitutional provisions for certain issues, and none of them was strictly adhered to. You remember the issues about, let me present it for the ordinary, the non-lawyer to understand. You ask questions about, for instance, the forfeiture of monies by the, do I call him president-elect or impostor? Do I call him legitimate president? I don't know what to call him. But there's someone in Aso Rock. And then the question is, did he forfeit monies? Is that forfeiture criminal? And then I tell you, very painfully, our judiciary had to look at forfeiture. And I've said it's a punishment, it's a punitive measure for either an offense, a criminal offense, or a civil offense. The judges of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal did not look at those issues on the merit. They threw it away because they were hasty to play and to dance to the tune of the puppeteer. What we saw on the 6th day of September was simply about the puppet and the puppeteer. On every count, it was about the puppeteer telling what they wanted. Abuja, the Constitution recognizes Abuja as special. The court says Abuja is not special. Abuja does not have a governor. The court says Abuja is like every other state. Abuja has one senator. The court says Abuja is like every other state that has 3 senators. Abuja has a development authority. The states have commissioners. And so I wonder where they got those proclamations or judgment from. But what is important to note is that Nigerians must understand that here we are up against a rogue establishment in the name of a political party. Little wonder the acronym of that party, APC, could simply pass for all people's criminal, all people's consult, all whatever you like. But the point is that they have refused to allow the rule of law have its primacy, have its say. And I want to say very pointedly that what we had was a Black Wednesday. Everything about due process was blackened. Everything about moral nexus, integrity, and dignity was blackened. Everything that you work for, sane society, was blackened. The judges and the justices spent all the time in the world pandering to the tune of the puppeteer. They talked about issues about double nomination. They threw it away on technicalities. They talked about issues on the status of Abuja and 25% of Abuja. They didn't even look at the constitution. That was how sad and blackened that day was. They talked about issues about forfeiture, and they simply told Nigerians that you can go commit a crime anywhere. Stay away from the law for 10 years and surface, reappear, and you're clean. Go and sin no more. You can run for any office. They talked about issues about double dual citizenship. And you know what? They said it doesn't matter. When the constitution, which is the ground norm, says that nobody who is a dual citizen can become the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. They didn't even look at the issues. That's how sad. That's how corrupted the whole process is. And let me say this, that we're at that point in our history and historicity where we must challenge Nigerians and indeed our people to ask strong questions. We're at that point where we must elect to either continue as a democracy or to usher in autocracy. And then unfortunately, as we discuss, people are wont to confusing democracy with autocracy. And so that is why even the man who lacks the moral nexus to govern is saying to Niger, we want you back to democracy. When in Niger you have an order that came via a bloodless coup, in Nigeria you have a gunboat democracy where they are unable to understand the difference between democracy, autocracy, and military rule. But I want to say pointedly and frankly that so many of us, and indeed most Nigerians, do not recognize the man in Aso Rock as validly elected to govern us. That's point number one. Point number two, most Nigerians believe, like a question posits, that what we have is not democracy. Most Nigerians also believe that what happened at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal led by Justice Samani and his team was miscarriage of justice. And I think that I'm compelled to accept, frankly, the words used by Atiku Abubakar, that what they gave was judgment, not justice. And Mother Justice, that blindfolded lady that epitomizes justice, does expect that justice will be without let or hindrance. That's why she's blindfolded. But unfortunately, what we had on the 6th of September 2023 was Mother Justice fully eyed, staring in the face of Nigerians and saying, "Oh, I don't see you. All I see is Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the APC, INEC, and what they want." That's all we got. Mother Justice saying, "To hell with justice. My judgment is that the electoral larceny of the 25th of February 2023 is okay." And Nigerians are watching. But let me say, whilst the principal actors, Atiku Abubakar and Peter Gregory are headed to the Supreme Court, those who believe in justice are thinking about the best options. And I do sincerely want to align with that Catholic former president of America, John F. Kennedy, who said, and I quote, that those who make peaceful change impossible make violent change inevitable.
When the Nigerian security services hear such comment and the quote you just given, does that then posit anything that they need to be worried about, that the citizens might rise up? That's a question. But if you push it further, one would then first to ask, At the point at that, when the judgment was being read in court, many thought that maybe those who probably were engaging on all eyes on the judiciary probably would have been on the street. And delivering the judgment, even the judges themselves said that you cannot get justice by threatening them. Do you think that the justices were threatened by anyone?
Let me say clearly that if the mantra or the hashtag all eyes on the judiciary poses some threat, then it means that the judiciary wasn't ready to do justice. Because a simple call to do right is actually and should be considered a plus to the judiciary. It means that Nigerians have confidence that the judges may, by Jove, do right. And so if they consider hashtag all eyes on the judiciary threat, then ab initio, they weren't ready to do justice. But what is important for me and to those, for all those who are listening to us, is the first leg of that question. Should the security agencies be worried? The answer is a capital letter yes. And I'll tell you for three reasons. As you and I talk, there's a resurgence of military coup plots and coup d'etats in Africa. As you and I talk, fundamentally, there's a quest for dignity, due process, decorum, and decency across the Sahel, West Africa, and across Africa. And then thirdly, which is very important, is that those who profess democracy must allow the will of the people to prevail, because congruent with democracy is the right of the people. Now, subject the Nigerian evolution and environment within the past 3-4 months to this crucible. Has the Nigerian political system, has the Nigerian pseudo-democracy aligned with these precepts? The first thing is, on the 25th of February, when Nigerians stepped out to vote, there was violence, there was banditry, there was brigandage. It was, if you like, what I'll call militaryocracy, etched on our socio-political canvas. Then the next leg is, have the present occupants of the seat of power allowed the judiciary to do what is proper, right, and right? The answer is capital letter no. And then very importantly, you do not sit where you lack the moral nexus to preach about democracy and tell Niger, Gabon, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and the likes about democracy. But very importantly, as I talk to you, I quoted the former Catholic president, and advisedly I'm using the word Catholic because he was just about the second Catholic to occupy the White House. And when he said that those who make peaceful change impossible make violent change inevitable, he was speaking about the hearts of the American people. Unfortunately, he didn't live to see the changes that he wished. And that's how serious it can be. As I talk about our country and the events of the past few months and the events immediately before us, I think about a country that has left so much promises unfulfilled. I think about a country that wants responsible and responsive leadership. I think about the people who voted for a candidate they can trust. And I think about a botched hope, botched expectations, botched aspirations. And then when you think that you can throw those hopes away, then you're building something. It's like the proverbial elementary biology where we talked about the earthworm burrowing the holes. You know, what we have are Nigerians watching and looking at the judges and saying, okay, we've got our eyes on you. And then Nigerians looking at the occupants of Aso Rock and saying, you think you can muzzle us. And Nigerians who are across space saying that you cannot ask Nigerians to return power to civilian rule when you actually stole the people's mandate. So it's a potpourri of sorts. But let me say clearly that, like so many Nigerians who truly love our country, my kind warning is to the judiciary. Because the next lever is the Supreme Court. Will you continue the same way the PEPT worked? Will you throw away justice on the altar of technicalities? Will you undermine the people and the expectations of the Nigerian people? Will you throw away the call for justice because perhaps lucre, money, has become the seal on your conscience? What will you do? Because you see, you do not take from a child what belongs to the child and think that you will have peace. You do not, like the Igbo proverb will say, take a child's candy, raise your hands up. You don't bring it down, and you think the child is going to let you rest. It's not possible. You don't beat a child and refuse the child the right to cry. That's how serious where we are is. Because I want to say that I do not have a personal axe to grind with Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his cohorts and his fellow travelers on the path of infamy. I have a pact with the Nigerian people. I believe that for so long we have suffered under rascally, irresponsible, and irresponsive leaders, and that the time has come for us to do what is right, proper, and right. And you can't keep us down ad infinitum. You can't keep us down ad nauseam. Nigerians are saying that they want a new order, and that they must get. And if through the electoral process they voted for someone different from the present occupant of the seat of power, at the worst instance, Nigerians were expecting that these judges will order a rerun. At the worst instance, because the Constitution provides explicitly that to become the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you must win 25% of votes cast in Abuja. The man who occupies the seat of power did not win 20% of the votes cast in Abuja. Our constitution envisages that the man who must be president must not have dual citizenship. The man who occupies Aso Rock today has dual citizenship. Our constitution envisages the fact that you will not have been guilty of perjury. The man in Aso Rock has lied about his age, his date of birth, and his certificate. Our constitution also envisages the fact that to be the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you must not have been convicted in any way of a crime or for a crime. The man in Aso Rock has forfeited over $460,000 for drug trafficking and the likes. So I think that we have a fundamental question on our collective conscience as a nation, and the Supreme Court must salvage the judiciary from this mess.
Some of the things we heard in the delivery sounded as if the judges were defendants. You're a lawyer, you understand what I mean. When a judge says and uses languages like the so-called Amazon Web Services engineer, isn't that worrying?
You see, if you're reading a script that is yours, you will own it. Judges are used to it. They will own their script. You'll hear them read. At some point, they read 4 or 5 lines and take the next 2 or 3 lines extempore. But with their eyes on the paper, they still couldn't read right. That tells you that it's simply the proverbial hand of Esau and the voice of Jacob. That tells you that what we had on our hands were judges who were procured, mark my use of word, procured to do what the establishment wanted. And I'll give you a practical instance. On the one hand, you say that the lady from Amazon was a member of the Labour Party. On the other hand, you are admitting the evidence of a serving senator, a member of the APC. You're saying, oh, we can't accept the evidence from the person from Amazon because the person is a member of the Labour Party. And then on the other hand, just next door, you're saying the evidence, the witness from the APC was tenable and admissible. That's more like that proverbial statement, the witch cried last night, the child dies this morning. And we're left with our conjectures. But let me say this, that very importantly, as we proceed and progress, we must tell these people that Nigerians are not idiots or fools. Nigerians are not gullible. Nigerians are not people you can shove something down their throats. Nigerians are thinking and dispassionate. Don't forget that a few months ago, when this whole process began, they said we were like 2, 3 persons tweeting in a room. We defeated that practice. Don't also forget that at some point they seized that narrative and said we didn't have structures. We proved to them that we were the structures. And as I talk to you, out there, Nigerians are everywhere saying no to this perfidious, no to this mendacious, no to this deceitful court ruling. And I say to you without fear of querulous critics that if the Supreme Court does not do what is right, proper, and tried, they will get their comeuppance. There's a popular street cliche that I've come to learn. I heard a young boy say, if you don't do right, we'll give you woto woto. I would urge the justices of the Supreme Court to ask their children, nephews, nieces, cousins, aunties, what woto woto, that street language woto woto stands for. Because I know that nobody will watch a few individuals filter away their future. Nobody will watch a few individuals throw to the dustbin their right to determine who truly governs them. And then you know what makes it very intriguing? As you and I talk, 100 years after this presidency, 100 days into it, hunger, disease, deprivation, despondency, and want has become the order of the day. You go out to the streets, you see hunger, you feel it, you touch it, you sense it. And then you ask yourself what leadership is doing to check it. And you find out that they are almost certainly unaware of what to do. Today, they tell you there's no more fuel subsidy. The next day, they tell you it's coming back in one way. The next day, they tell you, oh, we're coming with palliatives. The next day, they tell you, oh, we can't sustain the palliatives. That's how bad it has become. We have a people who do not understand what governance means. We have a people whose policy programmatic is knee-jerk. You know, we have a people whose policy trust is knee-jerk. We have a people who do not understand the present socio-political psyche of the Nigerian people. You know, if just suppose, if by Jove, we had leaders who are people, whether you call them impostors, whether you call them people who stole the people's mandate, whether you call them pretenders to the office of president, who knows what is right, who knows what to do with the economy, who knows what to do with leadership. You know what? Nigerians would perhaps say, let's give them a try. But we're dealing with people who do not know what to do with power. We're dealing with dealers. We're dealing with people to whom government means a new lot for you, my family. Let's use the cliche, me, myself, and I. And I think that the time has come for us to interrogate this present order. For my friend Festus Keyamo, my Egbon, that's what I call him, Babatunde Raji Fashola, my Egbon, Babatunde Ogala, I implore them to think about tomorrow. What we sow, ultimately, we reap. And it's a covenant that runs through every religion. So I want to say that beyond the politics and politics of now, what we must do is think about how we take our country out of a nadir, out of poverty, out of hunger, disease, despondency, deprivation to the amazing place of promise. And I do sincerely believe, without sounding partisan, without sounding patronizing, that the judiciary must give power to the man who truly and rightfully won the people's mandate.
Do you believe that the Supreme Court would actually do justice. Because if you consider the case, actually, from APM, PDP, Labour Party, none, not a single point was sustained. Isn't that an atrocious um, tendency, if I may use that word?
Do I believe that the
Yes.
Supreme Court will do right? My mentor Mahatma Gandhi said something a long time ago, and have always had the tendency to align with him. He said there comes a point in history and historicity where even the devil finds it right to do right. Perhaps, just perhaps, the justices of the Supreme Court will understand that the Nigerian people are looking up to them. Perhaps, just perhaps, the justices of the Supreme Court will understand that justice must be done rather than judgment. Perhaps, just perhaps, the justices of the Supreme Court will understand that the masses of our people want a new republic, a new day, and a new dawn. Perhaps, just perhaps, the justices of the Supreme Court understands that Nigerians are not just laymen, because by reason of progressive knowledge and engagement, the smallest obedient has come to become a quasi-lawyer. The man who is on the street has come to understand that the constitution provides for 25% of Abuja to be declared president. The man who is on the streets of Kudu understands that the time has come for leadership to interrogate not only the certificate of the man who says he's president, but to find out if actually he was involved in drug trade. The man in Abuja, my hometown, wants to understand whether the man who says he's his president is actually Bola Ahmed Tinubu male or Bola Ahmed Tinubu female. Perhaps, just perhaps, Musa in Kano wants to understand whether in actual fact the man who says he's his president attended Chicago State University or not. Perhaps, just perhaps, Kemi in Lagos wants to understand whether in actual fact the president-elect truly won the election. These are the fundamental issues. So I think that the onus is on the Supreme Court to do what is proper, right, and right. And it's not necessarily about what the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, Samani and his co-travelers did. Because I believe, and I want to say that my mentor Martin Luther King Jr. said a long time ago that the moral act of the universe is just and bends towards what? Towards justice. Those who think that they can throw away justice and replace the demands of justice with judgment are perhaps involved in a reverie. They're daydreaming because James Russell Lowell said in the 19th century, and I quote him, wrong forever on the throne, truth forever on the scaffold. That same truth sways the future. For behind the darkness unknown, standeth God in the shadow, keeping watch above his own. The Nigerian people are not asking for leaders from the moon, but they're asking for leaders they can trust. They're not asking for leaders from outer space. They're asking for leaders they know their date of birth. Leaders they can say truly graduated from so and so university or school. They're looking for leaders they can say, oh, I know my president is not a saint, but he's not a drug bearer. They're looking for leaders they can say truly won the election because the facts are clear. They're looking for leaders they can say truly cares about them. They're looking for leaders that they can vouch for some level of credibility, competency, capacity, and commitment to the common good. And that's not too much to ask. So I do sincerely believe that the onus is on the Supreme Court to do what is proper, right, and right.
The 1999 Constitution, Prof, Section 134, subsection 2, states that to be a president of Nigeria, a candidate must, says 1, have the highest number of votes cast at the election and have not less than 25% of the vote cast at the election, each of at least 2/3% of all states in the Federation and the FCT. Section 229 of the 1999 Constitution also provides the provision of these constitutions shall apply to the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, as if it were one of the states of the Federation. Now, if you take Section 134, subsection 2, juxtaposing that to Section 229, isn't that conflicting? Isn't that what gave the justices the leeway to actually deliver what we saw happen within the week?
I had a discussion on these provisions with my 20-year-old son, and he said to me that the first ones clearly stipulate. He's not a lawyer, he's a computer science student in one of our universities, and he said to me that the first one stipulates the margin, and the other one tells how to draw the lines. And I said, what do you mean? He said to me that the first one talks about Abuja. The first one talks about Abuja as one of the demands for a presidential, a person to be declared president. And the second one simply says that if you consider the demands for 24 states, because 2/3 of 36 states is 24 states,
Yeah.
then treat Abuja as though it were unique, a state. And so if you win 24 states, you have to win 25% of Abuja. And I looked at my son and I said, how come you think this way? He says, it's clear. And if you get the others, and so treat Abuja uniquely. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, but the justices basically threw that argument away and said that Abuja does not enjoy any special status.
Abuja has one senator. The other states have 3 senators. Abuja has a minister. The other states have a governor. Abuja does not have 3 geopolitical zones or districts, senatorial districts. Abuja has just one senator. Abuja is the federal capital territory of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And there is nowhere in the world where the federal capital territory of a nation is considered like or treated just like every other state. So I think that judges were being smart by half. And interestingly, we have had judgments by the Supreme Court where Abuja was treated uniquely. And let me tell you why Abuja is unique. Abuja is unique because under the law, Abuja has unique, the Federal Capital Territory has a Federal Capital Territory Development Agency. The state government has commissioners. Abuja doesn't have commissioners. Abuja has 6 local governments. The others have far more. The state with the least local government outside Abuja is Bayelsa also. And now, as you and I talk, fundamentally, Abuja is a melting pot, a confluence of several ethnicities and people, including the indigenous. You cannot say that Abuja is like every other state when the man who is Baggy, for instance, does not have a state he calls his own. He is from the Federal Capital Territory. And what the draftsman of the Constitution envisages is that for you to be president and reside in Abuja, the same way if you were running for the office of governor, you are expected to win at least 2/3 of the local governments of the states. You are expected to win at least 25% of the votes cast in Abuja because that's where you're going to live. You don't envisage a president who lives in Abuja to be grossly unpopular in the state, in the territory where he lives. The draftman expects that the president will be relatively popular in the territory where he presides from. And to say that Abuja does not enjoy a special status, let me say, let's just be elementary here. If you were to win 1% of votes cast in Abuja, how does the convoy of the president move around in Abuja? If you were to win 5% of the votes cast in Abuja, how does the president feel safe in Abuja? The draftsman of the Constitution envisages that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who lives in the Federal Capital Territory, will have some measure of popularity in the territory from which he will govern. That's exactly what it's all about. So Abuja is special, not only to the Constitution, but to the person who must be President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Those who have refused to admit this reality are perhaps going to meet us at the Supreme Court. And then if the Supreme Court decides to walk this path of larceny, deceit, debauchery, and perfidy, then Nigerians will be left with the choices open. Like I said, those who make peaceful change impossible, make violent change inevitable.
Thank you very much, Prof.